As we think about just that, tell me the story of Jesus, the song that we just sung, we look at tell me every word. Well, sometimes there are twists in the road. We're not always a straight path. We have choices that we have to make. The idea this morning, I guess I'm kind of stuck in Matthew, looking through his Sermon on the Mount and the first sermon that he gave. And I'm not going to say that's a bad thing because he had a lot to say in that short amount of time. One question that we come up with is about which way do we choose to go. Our spiritual life has two ways to travel. It can either travel towards joy and peace or pain and suffering. And the thing is, as we've been looking in Genesis, is that Adam and Eve had a choice. We see choices throughout our entire life. We see choices before us this morning. Do we come to service? Do we not come to service? Do we do the things that we want to do the way we want to do them, whether God cares about us or not? Or cares about, maybe the right way is, do we care about what God thinks? It's probably the better way to say that one, because God does care. The question is, do we? And so, strange enough, the last couple of days, I guess I was just supposed to come into this right here, because which way do we go? Two songs have been stuck in my head. We got the Stairway to Heaven and the Highway to Hell. So there are different, cultural songs. They're not necessarily religious songs, but if we think about it right here, it's kind of the two different ways that we can travel. We've got a straight and narrow, and on the picture, trying to use the pictures here. One of the reasons I resurrected the PowerPoint is there's another picture coming up that it's just easier to see than to explain sometimes. But if we look at this right here, the picture on our left of the stairway on the mountain area here is actually a picture of a spot in Hawaii. The Stairway to Heaven is what they call it. So it's a very narrowed spot, and it's going up the mountain. And we see a picture of someone who's climbed up this area, turned around and looked behind, and they see the rest of the area behind them. It's a very focused pathway. Versus the picture on our right is a very congested highway, and everyone is trying to run. And out of interest of being able to put it on here, we don't see the other side of the highway, which is just as congested. That number of people, that number of vehicles, we even have people piled up inside the back of trucks everywhere. The more you look at it, the more you find. The sad part, the more I think about this, and the more I think about the different paths that we look at and the way we look at it, how many people are taking each of these two options? In comparison, how many are going to fit on that trail that's straight and narrow? Versus how many can fit at any given time taking off away from and downward. And we see this over and over throughout history, and unfortunately that is a reality that more people are not here just this morning versus how many could be. What is the trend? When we look at, we were looking through the parables and we looked at the soils. There's only one that sees it all the way through. Two kind of start but then fall back away, and one never picks it up. So 1/4 is not great odds. I think it just means that we have a lot more work to do, and that way as we keep getting more people into that one, it starts improving our odds, maybe, who knows. But to get started with the straight and narrow, in Matthew chapter 7, verse 13 and 14 is where the inspiration for this comes from, and it says, "Enter at the straight gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and many there be which go thereat. Because straight is the gate, and narrow is the way that leads unto life, and few find it." For those few, it is a great thing. Unfortunately, it is just a few. So when we look at it, we start to get this idea, and even here of this picture here, changed up the picture to a castle. We look at straight as the gate. Well, if you think about a gate, we think about an entryway. Heaven is described as being a city with 4 walls with 12 gates around it. We also look at the old cities of what they would have been used to listening to or hearing about. Now, this is a castle, but it kind of gives us a visual representation. But the cities would be built for defense, for protection, which means that you have a funnel point for people coming in and out of the city, a gate. They might even have a long pathway like this, or even a drawbridge, a little moat around the area. If we were to take these side railings off of this walkway, what kind of path would you choose to walk going across that walkway? Especially if there were eyeballs looking at you in the water. We would want to stay straight and narrow. We want to be able to get into that city because inside that city is our protection. Inside the city is our comfort, maybe even our home, food, everything. But to get there, we have to walk straight and narrow. In order to walk this way, we have to know what it is that the walkway is paved with. What is the conditions for walking this way? There's so much good information inside of this chapter here, and I'm not going to cover nearly enough of it to really get that idea of how do we walk the straight and narrow. But if we go back to verse number 12, we start to see an opening to it. Therefore, all things whatsoever that men should do to you, do even so to them. For this is the law and the prophets. More simply stated, the way we like to call it today is do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. Right here in the Bible. So the very beginning of this, I don't know that there would be anyone in here, if I were to ask, who wants to be treated badly? Who wants to be beaten up or abused every day? I just saw a head shaking no. So that's a good thing. We don't want to be treated badly. We all like to do and be treated well. So why not start by treating others the way we want to be treated? Just at that by itself would make it so much easier to walk this pathway and get into that great city. But we have to know what the pathway of righteousness is. Verses 24 and 25, continuing this thought, therefore, whatsoever heareth these sayings of mine, and doeth them, I will liken him unto a wise man which built his house upon a rock. When the rains descended and the floods came, the winds blew and beat upon the house, and it fell not, for it was founded upon a rock. Jesus tells us how to get. If we choose this pathway here, the straight and narrow, he tells us, listen to my words. My words are your pathway. My words are the foundation to build upon. And we can go back, because he started this sermon in chapter 5, and he continues through, and he's almost over at the end of chapter 7 here with just this one sermon. So many different points that he gives. So many different things. And we'll slide back and look at a couple things here in a second, but what has Jesus said? Do we listen when we sang the song, Tell Me the Story of Jesus? Do we listen to the words that he tells us so that we can hang on to every word, so we can be like Mary when Mary and Martha invited him into his home? He came and sat and started talking to them, and Mary sat there at his feet listening to everything he had to say. Do we do that to Christ? Do we take and pick up our Bibles throughout the week and read them and try and understand what is it he's trying to tell us? Because he's telling us there's only one pathway, the straight and narrow. We must walk straight and narrow. Now we can even leave the guardrails up and the illustration will still be there. Because he has given us this guideline, this focus for us to use, but do we choose to follow it? As we look at verses 7 and 8, do we look upward and strive for more by asking, seeking, and knocking? We see a pattern here, something that we have to do. Think about that walkway. How are we going to get to the top of the stairs? We've got to pick our feet up and move them in front of each other, one step at a time. We actually have to do something to get there. It's not going to be as easy as just set our cruise control on the car and just take off down the road. We have to be in action. So verse 7 and 8 tells us about this. Ask, and it shall be given to you. Seek, and you shall find. Knock, and it will be open to you. For everyone that asks receives. He that seeks finds. And to him that knocks, it shall be opened. Now, in order to get the full of this verse right here, we have to look back to the rest of what he was saying. It's not about anything in life. It's not saying that if I go look for $1 million behind the door to my left, all I have to go is seek, knock, and open, and there it is. Not quite. It's not that kind of secret handshake, but it is something where Jesus is saying, look to God. If we are looking for righteousness, if we are looking for the trueness of his word, then we can find it. He will, it is here. And for us, it's even easier than it was for the people of the day that he was talking to, because it's all recorded right here for us. Will we ask, seek, and knock after righteousness' sake? Will we go looking for that? Will we take the step down the narrow and straight to try and work our way into that city, to make our way that direction? Because if we don't, the other option is the broad and narrow, or the broad and, not narrow, wide. Making sure y'all are paying attention. Are we going down the wide path? In the illustration of the pictures, it was that busy highway. You know what the problem is about busy roadways and highways and running our vehicle in the wrong way? Every now and then something might happen. We might have a breakdown. A lot of people want to take and do their own thing and then just say, well, Jesus, take the wheel. I think they refer to the steering wheel, but you might want to be more specific about which wheel you ask about, because you might lose one of your other wheels, as this guy here has just done. He's just lost the wheel, and I'm sure that he is not thinking that's the wheel that should have come off. Or is it? If we're on the wide path and we are on the way to destruction, do we not want our vehicle to break down so we don't get there? Unfortunately, we have this idea in society today that, well, just Jesus take the wheel. The problem I have with that statement is that to me it sounds like I don't actually want to be responsible for anything, so you do it for me. But Jesus said to ask, seek, and knock. That's something I have to do. So we have to be careful about losing our wheels. We have to have responsibility. We have to be able to head towards the right path. We are responsible for our own actions and how we walk the path which we choose. As we look through, there are several areas of this chapter that I haven't covered just yet, and that's because it gets covered now. Starting in verse 15, we start to see this idea. We were told already to walk the straight and narrow that leads to life. But in 15, it tells us, beware of false prophets, which come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly are ravaging wolves. Ooh, don't some things just look so good? Then you take a bite out of it, and it's not what it seemed. I like watching cooking shows. I like seeing some of the things they can do, and there are some challenges that say, take this and make it look like something else. So you think it's this, but then all of a sudden you take a bite and it is not. Ooh, I hope I get the nice end of that deal, but I've seen too many things. So what is it that we are doing? Does it look good, but it's really not? We need to investigate that. Beware of false prophets. Make sure that it is what it is. You will know them by their fruits. Do men gather grapes of thorns or figs of thistles? Even so, every good tree brings forth good fruit, but a corrupt tree brings forth evil fruit. Good tree cannot produce evil fruit, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. Every tree that bringeth forth not good fruit is hewn down and cast in the fire. Wherefore, by their fruits you will know them. Observe somebody. Are they walking the straight and narrow? We'll notice it. We may see them struggle from time to time because in order to walk the pathway, we have to work at it. If we're just coasting down the lazy river, just floating downstream, going out, like if we were to jump out here on the river and it'd take us down to the Mississippi, out to the coast, and we just coast on out and away into the broad openness. Versus if we're trying to paddle upstream to get up higher, it's going to take effort. Verses 26 and 27 continue this idea of responsibility of, and everyone that hears these sayings of mine and does them not shall be likened unto a foolish man which built his house upon the sands. When the rains descended and the floods came and the winds blew and beat upon the house, it fell, and great was the fall. What do we choose to do in our lives? Which direction do we choose to go? How much effort do we put in it? If we decide to build our house on sand, oh, it's easy. I don't have to worry about the ground. I'll just build right here like it is. Okay, we're in the Delta. We don't need to worry. We know about foundations. You don't have a foundation, you're not going to have a very good structure above you. Even if you do put in the time for foundation, it still has effect. Imagine if you don't put any effort. We put forth that effort, we put forth the ability, we have a stronger ability to go. To follow the path of destruction is not necessarily that we're looking to go be destroyed. It may just be the simple fact that we're doing absolutely nothing or not enough. Think about in Luke 16, we have the account of the rich man and Lazarus. Lazarus was laying out at the gate of this man's house and was just sitting there, sores all over him, just asking for the crumbs off of his table. And the rich man did nothing about it. Then Jesus brings us to the judgment. You know, they both die, and the rich man opens his eyes in torments, and Lazarus is at the bosom of Abraham. The rich man just didn't help the fellow person that he could have. He was just looking for the scraps. He wasn't asking for the nice cut of meat. He wasn't asking for anything major. We don't have any other details about the life of these two, but just given that right there, he didn't look after things that he could have. There are so many that have the ability to do things, but choose not to take care of others' needs. In Matthew 25 is the idea of the judgment scene where Christ says, you saw me, you fed me, you sheltered me, you clothed me. To those who were doing well, who were on the straight and narrow, and they said, when did we do that? When you did it to the least of my brethren. When you helped out one another, you were walking the straight and narrow way. But those of you who ignored me, said, go and be filled, and gave me nothing to be filled with, who said, go and be comfortable and happy, and gave nothing to help with that process, didn't even give me the raggedy shirt in the back of the closet on the floor to help, you just sent me away. Just doing that is the wide and broad. What about Felix? Another example of another situation. He was sitting there and Paul was accused in Acts chapter 24 and some of the surrounding area and had to go before Felix to plead his case. And he reasoned with him. Not just a person down here in the court scene saying this is why I shouldn't be guilty of this. He was reasoning, talking back and forth with him and his family, and Felix understood. But he said, I'll call you for a more convenient time. He received the information he needed but chose to do nothing with it. He said, I'll wait. But it could be all the way to the point that we're like Saul, persecuting the church, trying to kill the members unto its death. All of these are different avenues of being able to travel the wide and broad. Which pathway do we choose? When we think about this, we've got a choice. Our path that we have set before us matters. How many times, and this is something that's not on the outline here, and I ran out of spots, I was just jotting down here on the side here of I did a quick word search because I didn't think about this ahead of time, but something in Bible study caught my attention to this idea, and I searched for if, obey were the two words that I searched. And, so the main theme is, I remember in the Old Testament a lot of times, how many times did God reach out to his people through his prophets and say, if you will obey my voice, if you will listen to me, if you will do what I have to say. I quickly found examples in Exodus, Deuteronomy, Samuel, Job, and more. If you will obey my voice, he would pour out his blessings upon the people. Jesus has said, if we will follow the pathway that he has laid out, then we will receive the rewards. Will we do that? Will we choose the right path? Now, in this particular picture, we don't know what path leads where, but the beautiful thing is the picture that Christ has painted for us through his words tells us exactly where we go. Are we following his teachings? Are we going forward? Once we know about the way Christ has laid for us, will we decide to take it? The stairway might be more effort than cruise control down the highway, but I believe if we consider the destination that we're headed towards, we probably won't mind putting in that little bit of extra work. Exercising our legs a little bit in the walk on the stairway or the straight and narrow doesn't sound like too bad of a payoff for an eternity in heaven. The question is, which way are we on today? Are we on the straight and narrow? Have we chosen the pathway that we're going to walk? If we have chosen the path, is it the right one? If anyone is in need of the invitation, we invite all to come that are in need while we stand and sing.